Hi again, everybody. So for those of you that have not watched any of these yet, my name is Mr. Karabi, Todd Karabi, and I am a teacher at the Arts Academy at Benjamin Rush in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I am sort of trying to make these screen capture videos to be able to give my students, if they miss class or absent or need to go back to get something for their notes, just a short little video to be able to see and be able to understand concepts that we learned in class. So I didn't make one last week, and I just wanted to go in and do a summary of the 5 lessons that we did in health. So here it is. We were working on the Wellness and Overall Core Concepts unit, and we're specifically working on this wellness wheel that you can see here: physical, intellectual, social, emotional, and spiritual sections of Pisces. So instead of showing it big screen, I just sort of want to show it to you like this. And here's the wellness wheel again. You can get that from various different sources. If you Google it, you can see it from lots of different universities that use something similar to this, if not exactly the same. So when we last left off in the last video, I was talking about what wellness is and the 5 areas. And now we're moving on to talking about this: influences. And influences are defined as people, places, things, or events that we learn from either directly or indirectly. And all of our influences are a result of observing someone else do or say something, or personal experiences, no matter the source. Now, just a little side note, you probably are sitting there thinking, no duh, Captain Obvious. But here's a question: do you really pay attention to what your influences are and how important they are? I'm willing to bet that most of you don't actually stop and think how people in your life influence you for good or for bad, or how you are influenced by pop culture, media, and other things. So, what are the most common influences for teens? In class, we were given 3 minutes to discuss and list common influences. And the most common influences ages 12 to 17. You can Google it in case anything changes for whenever you're watching this video. But they are: number 1, social media community. Number 2, community environment in which they live. Number 3, the friends and peer group. Number 4, entertainers, including musicians, actors, athletes, internet personalities. And number 5, other pop culture. So what's trending, what's popular, what's hip, what's status. And a lot of people would put that with entertainers, but when I found it, it was different. I can't give you the source because I frankly didn't record it by accident, but I did a Google search on this, and what are the top 5 influences for teens? Prior to age 12, the top 5 influences are parents, siblings, television, friends, community environment in which they live. So community environments play a big role no matter what age you are. That's important to understand. So the neighborhood you grew up in will definitely change how you act and how you see life. And of course, parents being the number 1 influence in children's lives up until they become a teenager, and then they're nowhere around the top 5. They're not there. Social media, the number 1 influence. I asked my classes, how many of them ever watched the news? And a couple of them had some comments about not liking Fox News or not liking CNN and how either one is one-sided or whatever. But the vast majority of students, they don't watch the news at all. They don't watch Fox, CNN, or anything else for that matter. So that's kind of not surprising at all, but it really makes it so that it's difficult for young people to be able to examine other influences in their life. So I absolutely ask my class, stop and think about what your top influences are in your life, or who your top influences are in your life. And thankfully, a lot of my students do say that they have a mentor or role model that they look up to, a trusted adult, maybe a parent or a family member or possibly a teacher. But they do have some positive influences in their life. That can't be said for everybody. Influences are the starting point for what we believe and eventually all behaviors. So going to go back here for a minute to a previous slide from a previous video. We were talking about spiritual health, and we said that spiritual health by definition is values, morals, virtues, and beliefs. It's basically what's right and wrong in different situations. The little note on the bottom, arguably the most dangerous of the 5 areas that I teach, physical, intellectual, social, emotional, and spiritual, it's arguably the most dangerous because, well, frankly, let me show you why. So here we are. We start off with influences. This is an adapted graphic organizer that I saw at a group study a few years back. I added a few things to it, but I can't remember the author of it, so I apologize in advance. But this center circle is influences. And again, it's learned from birth from a variety of sources. It includes personal experiences, but it also includes things that you've observed, such as from media like music, television, social media, the news, but also just people around you. You have influences. And what happens is that those influences create a worldview. And one of the ways that I can explain this to make it easy is a worldview can be a cultural standpoint, so perhaps by a specific racial beginning, where experiences from history will go and influence your perception of society, or perhaps there's an American worldview compared to a European worldview or some other culture. And in our country, we have a lot of worldviews stemming from politics. So we have a liberal worldview or a conservative worldview. So you get the idea. So what is your worldview? That all comes from your influences. From worldview, it begins beliefs. So what you think things should be like, what is right and wrong. And the definition of belief is something that you hold to be true. It's not just a viewpoint. It's not just a opinion. It's a belief structure. So a lot of times you see the word belief, we right away think religion, but it's not necessarily that, because atheists have beliefs too. So beliefs are what you think is true, and why you think that's true comes from your worldview and your influences. From there, you get values. So what is important to you? From values, we have behaviors and actions. Behaviors and actions based on the beliefs and values. Now, these behaviors and actions, they have pluses and minuses, because the behaviors and actions can cause consequences. They can be negative consequences or positive consequences. They can make or break relationships, and they can cause problems moving forward. Here's a different graphic of the same exact thing. This is the poster that we have inside the classroom. For those of you that have it, I made this and had it printed out on vinyl. So again, influences and personal experiences, worldview, then beliefs, then values, then behaviors. Your behaviors result in actions, both internal and external. You could also say decisions or decision making. They have consequences. Consequences aren't necessarily bad, but there's a result. You can change that word to result. The results and consequences can be positive or negative, and whether they're positive or negative will increase or decrease relationships. Here's where I actually got it from. I wish I could remember this particular source, but this is a saved picture from a Google search a few years back. And the beginning worldview is what is real. And then the belief system is what is true. The values is what is good. And the behavior is what we do. And the only thing that's missing here that I added is in the middle, right before worldview, is influences and personal experiences. So from that, we went and we talked about the teenage brain. And I'm not going to show you this video, but this is a sample of a video from the SciShow. This is talking about the teenage brain explained. It's from 2014, but it's really, really beneficial. I show my students this video. I highly suggest that you watch this video. I do encourage you to be able to see that. After we finished talking about the spiritual section and looking at the Team Brain Explained, we also looked at a couple other videos concerning the Team Brain, but then I showed them a video called Teens Tell All. It was a short little clip on the Today Show. It was made in 2016, and it was specifically talking about teens, about different things. It says here about drugs, sexting, hooking up, and it's 6 minutes, 55 seconds long, and it's just a group of teens sitting around and answering questions. But it was really intriguing. So we talk about that, and we have a discussion leading to that. And the real summary of it, if I can just show you my lesson plan for a second, the real summary is just that it comes down to that we make choices, and every choice they make affects their future. And I go through a pretty dramatic lesson in the class, so I'm not going to repeat it here since this is just a summary video, but a lot of young people, they make these quick, emotional, spur-of-the-moment decisions because their brain is not finished developing yet. The frontal part of their brain, which has to do with logic, is not fully developed until their mid-20s. So therefore, they don't necessarily have the capability to be able to make a logical decision without positive influences and infrastructure in their life and in their family life. So, simple decisions can be whether or not to do your homework, should you study or not, what music to listen to, what to wear. And then I give a really humorous example of my wife picking out clothes, which they always tell her about because she substitutes in my school, and it's a big joke every year. But also, there's more serious internal problems. So like how to handle stressors, life's daily pressures, how to attack a problem, emotional seriousness of it. We talk about internal conflicts versus conflicts with others. And a lot of times making a decision is an internal conflict. It doesn't really have anything to do with anybody else. And a lot of times there are external factors, but other times they're not. When it comes to things that are internal decisions, which also have external factors to it, it's like decisions such as who to like, and what peer group to hang out with, and whether or not to use drugs, whether or not to drink, once you have age to drink, how much to drink, should I drink and drive? In terms of sex, like how far should I go, how fast should I go, when should I do it, who should I do it with, should I use a condom, should I use some type of birth control? These are all examples, and I tell them that all of these choices come down to one thing: it's their choice. It's nobody else's choice. It's their choice. They can't point fingers or blame. And as much as their teachers or their parents want to help them make decisions, they won't be there with them when the time comes that they actually have to make a decision. So then we go and we talk about another topic, and we talk about a person's outlook on life. And when we talk about a person's outlook on life, their attitude, their character, it's not just about decisions and behaviors, but also it's how do you look at life? And I asked them the famous question, is the glass half full or is it half empty? And then I tell them a story about my grandfather. He helped me answer that question one time, and it was asked of me. I was asked in college to answer the question, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? And my grandfather said, it all depends on whether you're pouring into it or drinking from it. And the short version is, if you're pouring into the glass, you're contributing to society and you're helping others, and you are constantly, your glass is going to be half full, for lack of a better word. And if you're drinking from it, then you just siphon from society. You take. You are always a consumer. You're not really a producer. And you're never going to be happy because you're never going to have everything that you want. You're never going to be fulfilled. And that's the idea behind it. And it's a lot more complicated than that. You can't just keep it that. Because sometimes you need to produce and help others, and sometimes you need to consume. You need to be the one getting help and taking. So you're looking at this thing, and what are some easy things that you can do that are general and simple in order to pour into your glass? And that's be on time, be responsible, show courtesy, follow rules and laws, show kindness, try to understand people's differences, show respect. And then more specifically, you can clean up after yourself. You can hold the door open for someone. And this isn't even getting into complicated, more complex things, such as not using drugs and knowing when to wait to have sex and decisions like that. These are just simple everyday life things. And I ask the students, what is your purpose in life? And I don't mean what is the meaning of life. I mean, what is your role in life? And most of them say to be a good person. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, it's kind of, what does that mean to be a good person? And who are you being good to? Are you being good to your family? Are you being good to your friends? Are you good because of a cultural, political, or religious perspective? Because one person being good might not be somebody else's definition of being good. So that's a really complicated answer, and we don't really answer it in class, but in case you are interested, like, what is your role in life? Your role should be that you're pouring into the glass, regardless of how big the glass is, or regardless of what your space is in society, that you should be pouring into the glass. You shouldn't just be taking from it. And then we did the project. We were presenting it on Monday and Tuesday, but we gave the project out to do a couple weeks ago. And really what it comes down to is we look at the Centers for Disease Control Prevention's high school youth risk behavior study. It's the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Report, and we specifically look at the 2017 results for Philadelphia. And then we go and we look at it through all of the years that the survey was done, all the way back to 1991. We also examine it based on demographics. And without getting into the details of Philadelphia, it's a variety of health topics. So we have unintentional injuries, so accidents and violence, tobacco use, that includes nicotine use for vape pens, alcohol and other drugs, sexual behaviors, dietary behaviors, physical activity, obesity, overweight, and weight control, and other health topics. And we pretty much focus on unintentional injuries and violence, tobacco use, alcohol and other drug use, and sexual behaviors. And then we only touch upon dietary and physical activity when we need extra copies for the groups. We're not going to get into the details for Philadelphia, but I highly suggest that you look up the Youth Risk Behavior Study, whether you're a student, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a high school student, middle school student, college student. I really suggest that you look at the Youth Risk Behavior Study, because in some cases the statistics are much higher than we want them to be, and in other cases they're much lower than what you think they will be. I tell my students all the time when they say things like, well, everyone goes and vapes. Well, the percentage of vaping is definitely increasing. We see news reports and read stories all the time lately. In September of 2019, there's been news reports almost every day about illnesses attributed to vaping and the problems with the chemicals that are in vape pens and nicotine dispersal devices. And that's absolutely true. But the percentages of young people that are vaping is astronomically higher now than they were just a year ago. But it's not everybody. So my students will be like, well, everyone I know vapes. Well, everyone you know might vape, but you don't know every single person. So these statistics are taken by roughly 5,000 students or so in each area. And when you go to the locations, they're all over the United States, in every single state and many, many, many different cities. So I highly suggest that you look at it and check it out.